Hi guys, so tonight we're gonna do a movie discussion of Howard the Duck from 1986. And let me know in the comments if you want me to keep my mask on or if you want me to take my mask off. I think the reason why I keep my mask on is because I think it'll make me stand out from other people. So that's why I leave the mask on. But so that's the poster for Howard the Duck. So this video is gonna be much longer than the Superman and Mole Men one. So before I start the video, I recommend watching the channel Yesterworld Entertainment video on Howard the Duck because it's extremely well researched and way better than my video. I will provide a link to that video in the description. I have not read any of the Howard the Duck comics yet. If you guys would like me to read those, let me know in the comments, but it won't be until July. I can do them. I structured this discussion differently with it being in the order of cast, plot, likes, trivia, or likes, dislikes, trivia, and conclusion. So there's another picture of Howard the Duck. And the cast director was Willard Hewick, and George Lucas did not direct this film, but he produced it. His name was put in the marketing of the film, and he came up with the idea for the movie. How involved Lucas was in the film is unknown, as there are contradictory statements. The script was written by Gloria Katz and Willard Hewick, who were husband and wife. They're a couple. So the same guy directed the movie, also wrote with his wife. Ed Gale was the super performer for Howard the Duck, and I don't know if he was credited or not. Apparently, he wasn't allowed at the premiere of the movie, which really sucks. But well, not really, because I mean, a lot of people a lot of people do not like this movie. This movie is pretty bad. But Jordan Prentice was the original super performer for Howard the Duck. But he was replaced. And I'll get to that after when in the trivia section. So Tim Rose, Steve Sleep, Peter Baird, Mary Wells, and Lisa Sturtz were puppeteers for Howard the Duck. Chip Zien was Howard the Duck's voice. Leah Thompson, who was in Back to the Future, she played Marty McFly's mom, was Beverly Switzler. Tim Robbins from Shawshank Redemption, well, before Shawshank Redemption came out, he was unknown when this movie was made, played Phil Blumbert. Jeffrey Jones played Dr. Walter Jennings, and he was arrested in 2002 for being a offender, so I will not show any images of him and try not to talk about him because he's a bad person. David Paymer played Larry. Paul Guilfoyle played Lieutenant Welker. Liz Segal played Ronette. Dominique Davalos played Cal. Holly Robinson Pete, who was in the show original 21 Jump Street show, made her film debut as the band. I think that would have been Leah Thompson's bandmate in the movie. Casey. Tommy Swerdlow played Ginger Moss. Richard Edson played Richie. Miles Chapin played Carter. Paul Comey played Dr. Chapin. Richard McGonigal played a first cop. Virginia Capers played Cora May. Miguel Sandoval played a bar entertainment supervisor. William Hall played Officer Hanson. Richard Kiley was the Cosmos. So I guess he was the British narrator at the beginning. John Fleck played Pimples. Brian Steele, who was uncredited, was the voice of the Dark Overlords of the Universe, who's the main villain of the movie. And the future Nirvana and Foo Fighters guitarist Pat Smear appears as an extra. I didn't notice him when I was watching. But here's another image of Howard the Duck and Leah Thompson, who plays Beverly Switzler. So the plot. So Howard the Duck lives on Duck World, which is a planet similar to Earth but inhabited by anthropomorphic ducks. One night his armchair propels him out of his apartment building and into outer space. Howard lands on Earth in Cleveland, Ohio. Upon arriving, he encounters a woman being attacked by thugs, whom he defeats using a unique style of martial arts. He calls it Quack Fu. The woman, Beverly Switzler, takes Howard to her apartment and lets him spend the night. The following day, Beverly takes Howard to Phil Blumberg, a scientist who Beverly hopes can help Howard return to his world. After Phil is revealed to be only a lab assistant, Howard resigns himself to life on Earth and rejects Beverly's aid. He gets a job as a janitor at a romance spa, but eventually quits and returns to Beverly, who plays in a band called Cherry Bomb. At the club where Cherry Bomb is performing, Howard confronts their manager when he insults the band and plans to coerce Beverly. A fight breaks out, which Howard wins. Howard rejoins Beverly backstage and accompanies her back to her apartment, where Beverly persuades him to be the band's new manager. The two flirt and get into bed, and then thankfully are interrupted by Phil and two of his colleagues, who reveal that a laser spectroscope they were inventing was aimed at Howard's planet and transported him to Earth when it was activated. They theorize that Howard can be sent back to his world through a reversal of this process. Upon their arrival at the laboratory, the laser spectroscope malfunctions, raising the possibility of something else being transported to Earth. At this point, Dr. Walter Jennings is possessed by a life form from a distinct region of space. When they visit a diner, the creature introduces himself as a dark overlord of the universe and demonstrates his developing mental powers by destroying the table, utensils, and condiments. A fight ensues when a group of truckers in the diner insults Howard. He is captured and almost killed by the diner chef, but the Dark Overlord destroys the diner and escapes with Beverly. Howard locates Phil and they discover an ultralight aircraft, which they use to search for the Dark Overlord and Beverly. At the laboratory, the Dark Overlord plans to transfer another of his kind into Beverly's body with the Dimension Machine. Howard and Phil arrive and seemingly destroy the Dark Overlord with an experimental neutron disintegrator, but the creature is merely forced out of Jennings' body and attacks them in its true form. Howard fires the neutron disintegrator at the beast, obliterating him. He then destroys the laser spectroscope, preventing more Dark Overlords from arriving on Earth, but at the cost of his only chance at returning to Duck World. Howard then becomes Beverly's manager, hires Phil as an employee of his tour, or her tour, and performs with her on stage. So the likes. The opening scene with the lake traffic and the two moons telling the opening, so that because there's two moons there, it tells it's on Duck World in New Quack City, is pretty nice. And Chip Zien is pretty good at voicing Howard the Duck, though personally I would have made Howard's voice a bit gruffer. Howard being flinged across the city in his chair and being sent to our dimension is done very well. I think that's one of the first cable effects in movies, where they have people lifted by cables or something. So it's especially good for 1986. And the special effects are amazing, I think, for the time period, especially the Dark Overlord and the tongue coming out of Jennings' mouth when he's driving with Beverly Switzler. They are likely the top 5 or top 10 best special effects of that decade in the 80s, from what I've seen. I'm probably wrong, though, since I didn't grow up back then. The costumes that aren't Howard the Duck are pretty cool. Howard meeting humans for the first time and being thrown everywhere is kind of funny. Leah Thompson is a pretty good singer. She's an okay actress. I don't know, I don't know, she doesn't really match the tone. Well, there isn't really a tone because the tone goes all over the place, but when she and Howard both argue and reconcile, it's not at all believable, though. And this is probably more an issue of the script, however. The soundtrack in this movie is pretty good. The set design is really good. The Quack Fu fighting part is funny. I like the scene where Howard is talking about wanting to go home and also pursue his own dream when he's first in Beverly's apartment. I find it funny when Beverly was carrying Howard in a bag and like he was in the taxi car with the bag. And I find when Tim Robbins' character is about to tell the other scientists about Howard, but stops awkwardly, is funny. He is a good and funny. I find he's funny in the movie. I think some people might find him annoying, but I find he's funny. I like he does a Donald Duck impression for very briefly. I like his impression. I found it funny when Howard scared off the kids and the teacher. I find Virginia Capers to be a good actress in the scene where Howard gets a job. I like the scene where Howard gets Beverly's money from her crooked manager. It kind of subverts the usual tough guy fight scenes. I don't like to admit this because of his crimes, but Jeffrey Jones was pretty good as the sort of main villain of the movie since he was possessed by the Dark Overlord. But when he was possessed, he did like really good facial expressions, though, and that. But I like the line Beverly uses when Jennings has a pain in his gut from being possessed, and they're in like a chase scene, and she says, "Is this something you ate?" I think Howard the Duck says something else. And the fight scene at the diner was good with all the chairs and tables flying around. The scene where Howard and Blumbird are flying is pretty cool. It reminds me sort of E.T. I like the final act of the movie due to its high stakes despite how out of tone it is with the rest of the movie. Brian Steele is very good at voicing the Dark Overlord. Howard has sort of a character arc as at first he wanted to go back to Duck World, but in order to save Earth he destroyed his portal back, and at the end of the movie it seems he's become accepted in society as he and Beverly have become celebrities, so Beverly achieved her dream of becoming a rock star. So the dislikes I have are all the references to Duck versions of movies at the beginning are kind of funny at first, but they're a bit like overplayed. Like they go on for way too long. There's especially a scene where she's looking at Howard. Beverly Switzler is looking at Howard's wallet, and it goes on I think for too long as well. The Howard the Duck costume looks pretty bad and not really like the comics, but considering that the creators had to change what Howard looked like due to Disney and all the technical problems I'll talk about later, it is remarkable that the movie got made. And the costume being ugly is why they didn't show it in the marketing. And I don't think it's as bad as people say, but it's still really pretty ugly though. But the brief Playboy Duck magazine at the beginning and the duck woman in the bath with the duck boobs is really terrible. I shouldn't have seen that. It's so weird. Such a weird thing to have. But anyway, the British narrator talking. So that was the actor I saw about earlier. When Howard goes into space, it's kind of cool at first. When he's talking about the multiverse and that, like how worlds are made. And then he says at the end, like at the beginning of time, there was Howard the Duck, which that line makes no sense. I think it's just put there because it sounds cool. The punk humans, when they find Howard for some reason, are not shocked to see an anthropomorphic talking duck. Pretty much everybody else is afraid of him, though. And there are a lot of weird SEX references in this movie, I noticed. This movie's very raunchy in like the first half, which makes me think that the writers were massive perverts, and it's so bad it actually gets in the way of the movie. I've never seen that ever happen in a movie. Even like really graphic sex, like a lot of sex scenes in that. I've never had that. Like for some reason, this movie is all like in the first half. It's like just sex jokes, especially because one of the actors is a sex offender, so that aged really poorly. Some examples I noticed just in the first 10 minutes are the aforementioned duck stuff. The back of the female bikers, jacket saying Satan's SLUT. Two people making out in what appears to be an attempted, by two punks. Well, they're assaulting her when Beverly Switzler meets Howard for the first time. I think the comics were kind of like that from what I understand too, but I haven't read them. So maybe that's what they're trying to do, but anyways, pretty weird. How Beverly Switzler happens to know a scientist she just happens to know that, who can send Howard back home is really lazy, I find. Well, I don't know if she knew, I'm pretty sure it's implied she knew him before meeting Howard, so that's pretty lazy, I think, writing. But what genre this movie is very hard to say. I guess it's like an absurd science fiction adult comedy. In the first half, it's extremely adult, but in the second half, it becomes like more like an adventure kids movie or something. It's really weird. It's very bizarre when um, it's like they cut out all the sex jokes, and then it becomes like a totally different movie. And so the tone is very inconsistent. I mean, if your main character is kind of is like a talking duck though, and you wanted to make it more adult, I guess it would be very difficult to do that, especially back in 1986. But still, it's not good. But Howard is kind of sympathetic when being isolated in a world he doesn't belong to. The problem is that when the movie does explore these themes very briefly, it's usually for comedic effect, which sort of makes sense because it's a comedy. But I still think they could have went much deeper into that element of his character, and they missed that opportunity. Phil Blumbert walks in as soon as Howard reconciles with Beverly, and this is kind of explained by him dating one of Beverly's bandmates, but it's pretty lazy, I think, still. And there's the most famous scene probably ever about this movie. The reason people remember this movie is because there's a scene between Howard the Duck and Beverly Switzler when they are in bed together and about to have sex. And it doesn't happen. But a lot of people say there's a full on, but it doesn't actually happen because they're interrupted. But it's very strange. And another reason it's bizarre is that Howard is the one that starts flirting with her, and then Beverly says she like, I think she pretty much outright says she wants to have sex with him, and then Howard says no, like he just says he doesn't want to. So, and then she pressures him. It's really weird anyway. But the chase scene is pretty bad because there's no cops going after them. Like, I guess it's because of budget reasons or something. But Howard and his friends are acting as though they're running for their lives in the car. And Walter Jennings is transforming, but why are they letting him drive in the first place when they know he's sick? And there's no mention about why the police stopped chasing Howard at the end of the movie. He's just, I guess he's pardoned or something. I don't know. And the Tim Robbins character, his arc of wanting to become a scientist, he wants to become famous, it's never resolved. It's just left open-ended. And so here's the trivia. So this is the longest section, I think. So in 1980, before the movie was made, there was a pilot for a Howard the Duck radio show, which was recorded with James Belushi in the title role, though the program was never aired. An animated series was also proposed. A separate Howard the Duck film before Universal one was in development by Celluloid Pictures and had Dennis Hacken as the director-writer and Neil Dabrowski as an additional writer. Stan Winston, who's a very prolific special effects artist in the 80s and 90s, who worked on movies like Terminator, Jurassic Park, Aliens, and other classic movies. He was hired to make a puppet of Howard the Duck, which looked very close to the comics version. Yes, so he was hired to make a puppet of Howard the Duck, which looked very close to the comics version. And all these projects were canceled due to legal disputes between Marvel and the Howard the Duck creator Steve Gerber. Marvel eventually got the rights back to Howard, and then the Universal Howard the Duck movie was developed. And these are what Howard was originally supposed to look like, and looks much closer to the comics. And also, I added in a picture of the Dark Overlord at the end because he looks really cool. But this is the first theatrically released Marvel movie, if you don't count the Captain America 1944 serialized movie, which functioned more like a TV miniseries. In the UK and outside of the US, this movie was called Howard, A New Breed of Hero, and this name was changed due to how bad the movie performed in the US. And the screenplay was originally intended to be an animated film, but the film adaptation became live action due to a stipulation by Universal executive Frank Price, who he created the $6 Million Man. I think the show he made. He made a bunch of other shows and movies and that. As animation costs far more than live action. It was not due to a contractual obligation with Universal for a 2-movie deal, as that deal had been finished with George Lucas producing the movie More American Graffiti. George Lucas's close friend John Landis was originally slated to direct this film, but after reading the script he turned down the opportunity due to the police car crashes in the finale. He felt that was too similar to his previous film, The Blues Brothers, from 1980. And an early proposed storyline involved the character being transported to Hawaii. Willard Hewitt states that this storyline was considered because we thought it would be sort of fun to shoot there. According to Gloria Katz, they did not want to explain how Howard arrived on Earth initially, but later rewrote the screenplay so that the film would begin on Howard's homeworld. Hewitt and Katz wanted to incorporate both lighter, humorous elements and darker, suspenseful elements. Katz stated that some readers were confused by the sexual elements of the screenplay, so they were unsure as to whether the film was intended for adults or children. And Hewitt and Katz wrote the ending, leaving the story open for a sequel, which was never produced. And this version was not adapted due to Universal executive Frank Price wanting to make the movie more an action comedy like Ghostbusters, which he greenlit when he worked for Paramount. So the filmmakers consulted with Disney's lawyers to make sure Howard did not resemble the Disney character Donald Duck too closely, because Disney would have sued them. Howard's appearance was redesigned several times during the process, including his clothes and the shape of his bill, and that's why Howard the Duck looks so terrible in the movie. The original Marvel comics were apparently similar to the style of Deadpool, again I haven't read them, with adult-oriented humor. This was significantly toned down for the later part of the film, not the first part, because the first part's really raunchy, but it was made to appeal to the second, or to the younger audiences. But I mean, like, I don't know, but anyway. Leah Thompson was cast as Beverly Switzler due to her appearance in Back to the Future. Tori Amos, Phoebe Cates, and Linnea Quigley were among those who auditioned for the part. Paula Abdul, Kim Basinger, Jodie Benson, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Laurie Singer were all considered for the role as well. In a 1986 interview in Star Hits magazine, singer Belinda Carlisle stated that she auditioned for a role in the film. Whether or not it was for this role, I don't know. Leah Thompson purchased clothing from thrift stores because she wanted to appear at the audition as a cross between Madonna and Cyndi Lauper. During the shoot, Thompson complained that the filmmakers chose to shoot Howard's close-ups before hers. Thompson also states that she regrets not wearing a wig, as her hairstyle took 2 hours a day to prepare. She also did her own singing in the movies as well, which I'll get to a bit later. And to play the physical role of Howard, Hewitt and Katz held casting calls with dwarf actors, eventually casting child actor Jordan Prentice and hiring Ed Gale, who had been rejected because he was too tall for the role. to perform stunts and play the role during evening shoots. Prentice found the shooting conditions to be too difficult to handle. At one point, the duck suit caught on fire when he was still in it, and the film editors were unable to match day and evening sequences because of the difference in the two portrayals. Because one was shorter and walked a different way, and one was taller and also walked a short way. And because Gale also served as an understudy, he took over the role. Hewitt and Katz auditioned a number of actors, including Jay Leno, Jeff Goldblum, John Cusack, Hugh Paulson, Townsend Coleman, Robin Williams, and Martin Short for Howard's voice. Williams worked for a week before quitting out of frustration over syncing his voice to the Duck's animatronic bill. An actor to voice Howard had not been cast yet during filming, so all of Howard's lines were read on set by the puppeteers, and the bill moved to fit their bland delivery, and that made it impossible for Williams to use his wild, improvisational style in post-production because it didn't work well with the bill's movements. And also, I've heard there in the Yesterworld Entertainment video, he plays from a podcast, and apparently he didn't like the director was shouting at people and he didn't like that kind of atmosphere, so I think that might have been another reason he left. But so as a result of that, Chip Zien was cast because the filmmakers felt his nasal voice suited the part. Because Howard's voice was not cast until the film had begun editing, synchronization was extremely difficult. The ultralight sequence was difficult, requiring intense coordination in actors, Robbins and Gale to actually fly the plane. The location scout was stumped for a location for the sequence. After she described what she was looking for, a telephone repairman working in her office in San Francisco suggested Petaluma, California, for the scene. Because of the limited shooting time, a third unit was hired to speed up the process. The climax was shot in a naval installation in San Francisco, where conditions were cold throughout. The film cost an estimated $30 to $36 million to produce. Or the film did, yeah, the film cost that amount. And Howard was initially intended to be a fully computerized character at one point in development. It wasn't before they were doing the puppet. But these attempts proved unsuccessful. Yeah, it was before they were doing the puppets in the Universal version, but not the version that was briefly produced or trying to be made before Marvel got sued in the early 80s. That's what I'm trying to say. The idea of fully puppeting Howard was explored, but the filmmakers determined that they would need an actor in a suit to portray him for much of the film. Lucasfilm built animatronic suits, costumes, and puppets. Because of the limited preparation time, varied ducks created for the film would explode or lose feathers, and multiple ducks were built with the wrong proportions. On the first day of shooting, the crew realized the poor quality when they found that the inside of the puppet's neck was visible when its mouth opened. Hewitt repeatedly reshot scenes involving Howard as the animatronics were improved. Because multiple puppeteers were in charge of controlling different parts of the animatronic body, Hewitt was unable to coordinate the shoot properly. The opening sequence where Howard's chair was propelled out of his apartment used wires which were later digitally erased by a computer. This was the first use of this technique, which soon became popular and was used in films such as Back to the Future Part 2 and Terminator 2 Judgment Day and The Matrix. And the effect of the feathers on Howard's head becoming erect during the love sequence took months to prepare, apparently. The voice of Howard, Chip Zien, was not cast until after the shooting was completed. Because Gale's voice was difficult to hear during the shoot, Hewitt ordered Gale to perform his scenes without speaking any of the required dialogue, which was later synchronized during the edited process. Lead puppeteer Tim Rose was given a microphone attached to a small speaker, which would allow Rose to speak the dialogue to help the actors respond to Howard's dialogue. While wearing his suit, Gale could only see through Howard's mouth and had to sense his location without proper eyesight. Gale often had to walk backward before beginning rehearsals in between takes. A hairdryer was stuffed in Howard's bill to keep Gale cool. Gale taped 2 of his fingers together to wear the 3-fingered hands created for the Howard costume. A total of 6 actors gave physical performances as Howard. The film score was written by John Barry, although most of it was replaced by material composed by Sylvester Levay. Most notably, the musics for the scene where Howard and Phil fly the ultralight. Barry's original cue is heard on the soundtrack album. Gloria Katz deemed Barry's soundtrack to be too old-fashioned and lacking in energy. Thomas Dolby wrote the film's songs and chose the members of Cherry Bomb. Actress Leah Thompson performed her own singing for the role, although she states that the filmmakers were unsure as to whether they would keep her vocals in the final film. Thompson was required to learn choreography with the band and record the songs so that they could be synchronized during filming. The final sequence, in which Cherry Bomb performs the film's title song, was shot in front of a live audience at the Warfield in San Francisco. The song was co-written by Dolby, Ali Willis, and George Clinton. Gale was choreographed to dance and play guitar as Howard. Howard's appearance was left out of the pre-release promotions to keep him a surprise. This led to 2 versions of the music video for the title song, one with Howard obscured and one with his face out in the open. And Dolby built a special guitar for Gale to use for rehearsal and filming. In 2019, Intrada Records released a 3-disc expansion, including the first compact disc release of the original soundtrack album, as well as John Barry's complete score for the film. The film's screenplay was adapted into comic book format, so let me know if you want me to read the comic version, by the writer Danny Fingeroth and artist Kyle Baker for Marvel Comics. The adaptation appeared in both Marvel Super Special number 41 and in a 3-issue limited series. A novelization of Howard the Duck was written by former National Lampoon editor Ellis Wiener. A video game sequel was released for the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, and Apple II in 1986, and for the ZX Spectrum and Amstrad CPC in 1987, developed by Arnative Software and published by Activision. So apparently that game didn't get any good reviews. Apparently it was largely negative reviews, I think. There was a phone number where you could call Howard the Duck, and it was 1-900-410-DUCK. And the evil overlord is based on the Marvel villain, who is the reason Howard was brought to Earth. His full title in the comics is Thog the Netherspawn, Overmaster of Somnus. He possesses the following powers and abilities: vast dark powers, elemental abilities, lasers, possession, and telekinesis. The cook in the sushi restaurant is wearing an Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom 1984 t-shirt. I didn't notice that. Which was another Lucasfilm production written by Willard Hewitt and Gloria Katz. And also there's a parody of, I'll get, that's the next thing. So there are various Duck references, names of Duck films on movie posters, seen at the beginning in the picture were Splashdance, title spoofing Flashdance, and Breeders of the Lost Stork, title parrying Raiders of the Lost Ark. Howard's fatigue pants are printed with the so-called Duck Hunter camouflage pattern. There's a poster in Howard's room for the movie My Little Chickadee, starring Mae Nest and W.C. Fowle. And following a test screening of the movie, Universal executives Sid Sheinberg and Frank Price were allegedly arguing about who was to blame for greenlighting this film, which then ended in a fist fight. Shortly after the film was released, Frank Price quit his job at the head of Universal. Variety reported the story with the headline, "Duck Cooks Price's Goose." This movie was the second consecutive financial failure for director Willard Huyck, whose previous film, Best Defense 1984, was also a box office flop. The failure of this film killed off his directing career for good, and he never made another film after this one. Articles saying that George Lucas sold Pixar to Steve Jobs due to Howard the Duck bombing are only partially true. I learned this from the Yesterworld Entertainment video. Although he did sell Pixar to Jobs, it was before Howard the Duck came out. Prior to the release of Howard the Duck, Stan Lee was trying to pitch multiple Marvel characters to film studios for them to get movies. After Howard the Duck bombed, these studios rejected any more attempts to bring Marvel to theaters. It wouldn't be until Blade 1998 that a Marvel character would get a theatrically released film. Everything else live action in that time span was direct-to-video, and the only one I watched of those is Captain America 1990, and that movie's not at all very good. That movie's pretty bad. It might be worse than Howard the Duck, honestly. I think it is worse than Howard the Duck, the 1990 Captain America. I'll review those movies in the time period, the direct-to-video movies. I'll talk about them eventually. This was the lowest grossing Marvel movie until surpassed by Punisher Warzone from 2008. I actually liked that movie. I watched that a few months ago. I think that movie's pretty underrated. I like Punisher Warzone. And one of only two films based on a Marvel comic to win the Razzie Award for Worst Picture. The other was Fantastic Four 2015. I've not seen that one yet. I think I watched like the first 10 minutes, but I just stopped watching. But anyway, oddly, in both cases, it tied with another film for the award. Under the Cherry Moon 1986 was the film this tied with. And together with Hulk 2003, these are the only two films based on Marvel Comics that are owned by Universal Studios. So yeah, I was saying, I think The Incredible Hulk 2008, that's owned by Marvel, I think, because I've seen clips posted by the Universal Studios YouTube channel with Hulk 2003. I think that's why that's not on Disney Plus too. But in 2011, a screen-worn Howard mask was sold on eBay for $1,525. A few weeks later, an original worn-out animatronic prop of Howard was also offered, but nobody had any interest in it. The podcaster and author Arnie Caravalho owns one of the world's largest private Howard the Duck collections, with memorabilia, cast and crew items, and actual movie props, including the animatronic head used in the movie. In a Twitter comment, Leah Thompson confirms that she still has the Les Paul guitar, Cherry Bomb, and sometimes still plays it. And the title character made a second cinematic appearance in the post-credits scene of Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, he was voiced by Seth Green. Exactly 28 years and one day after the film's theatrical release in 1986. He also makes cameo appearances in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Volume 3, and Avengers Endgame. He was also meant to make a cameo appearance in Avengers Infinity War, but I guess was for time reasons cut out. Here is a list of cartoons and video games that Howard the Duck appears in as of January 2025. I may not have gotten all the video games, but I think all the cartoons I got. So the cartoons, X-Men the Animated Series from 1992-1997. He doesn't physically appear, but he is seen on Beast's t-shirt in 2 episodes. Ultimate Spider-Man 2012-2017, he makes cameos in 1 episode, and then another episode he's a pirate. There's a pirate version of him. Marvel All Winter Squad, which is an extremely obscure webisode pilot, which came out in 2012, and it was only one pilot and it never went anywhere. Hulk and the Agents of Smash, which lasted from 2013 2015. He made a cameo in one episode. Guardians of the Galaxy 2015 2019. He made more of a recurring role for 7 episodes. What If 2021 to 2024. I think it's 4 episodes he appears in, but I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. But Video Games, Howard the Duck 1986, which I talked about earlier. He is a non-playable assist card character in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which was released in 2011. He appears as a playable character in Lego Marvel Superheroes from 2013. He appears in the defunct Facebook game Marvel Avengers Alliance as a playable character. That was released in 2012. Marvel Contest of Champions that was first released on the iOS in 2014 is playable. And Marvel Puzzle Quest, another mobile game, he's a playable character. And he's a playable character in Lego Marvel Superheroes 2 from 2017. And he appears in the Guardians of the Galaxy ride at Disneyland, and in one part of the ride he appears. And plans have occurred for Howard the Duck to get a reboot or a sequel. In 2016, Rob Zombie claimed that he had pitched a Howard the Duck film to Marvel, but was turned down. After a rumor in June 2017 incorrectly stated that Marvel Studios was developing a film-based Howard that would involve Gunn as a producer, Gunn himself confirmed later that September that a film for the character was not being made. In June 2018, Leah Thompson revealed that she was preparing to meet with Marvel Studios about her pitch for a new Howard the Duck film she wanted to direct after starring in the 1986 film. But Thompson had developed the pitch to be set in the MCU and worked on it for a really long time with modern Howard the Duck comic book writers Chip Zdarsky and Joe Quinones. I can't pronounce. Quinones, who had included her as a character in one of their comic runs. That September, Thompson said that Marvel Studios loved her pitch, but told her they had no plans for a Howard the Duck film, and that they would contact her again following the development of their MCU television series on Disney Plus. I guess they didn't after, but Thompson expressed further interest in directing an MCU reboot for the character following his appearance in What If. Hulu intended to air an Howard the Duck animated series, written and executive produced by Kevin Smith and Dave Willis, that would have led up to a crossover special involving MODOK, Hitmonkey, Tigra, and Dazzler called The Offenders. However, in January 2020, it was announced that the Howard the Duck series was canceled. And honestly, those other ones it sounds not very good. It sounds like it wouldn't have been very good, but... Conclusion. So, here's a picture of the actor from Shawshank Redemption and Howard the Duck. It's kind of really small, sorry about that. But overall, I thought that the movie had good action scenes, excellent special effects, some funny parts, aside from the duck boobs and the scene where Beverly is flirting, trying to have sex with Howard in the bed. Mostly good acting, detailed sets, good costumes aside from Howard's, and a good soundtrack. The worst parts of this movie is the wildly inconsistent tone. The first half of the movie is really adult, and the second half is completely different. And then Howard the Duck's appearance being ugly, his implied romantic relationship with Beverly, which is illegal with bestiality, and various issues with the plot. The main reason this movie failed and got the reception it did, from what I understand, is because it had no real target audience. Kids wouldn't have watched, because it's inappropriate for kids. First half is really inappropriate. Adults didn't understand it. This is all over the place with tone and that, and I don't know. And people with the comics didn't like it because apparently it didn't adapt the comics very well. And yeah, so the massive tonal shift and the sex references turn people off, and that's from what I understand. It did not adapt the comics well, and the extremely bad marketing, which claimed that Howard the Duck was a real person, and that was so they wouldn't have to show the Howard suit because they're embarrassed by it. And I don't think this movie is as bad as people say it is, which people are usually overlooking the good parts, but I agree it has very major problems in it. But the movie never once bored me. I was all entertained throughout the whole movie because it's a pretty funny, it's a pretty strange movie. There's a lot of action and funny parts in it. It's pretty good. It's pretty entertaining. But I give this movie a 3 out of 5, mostly due to the special effects in the second half of the movie. I think most people would give it a 2 out of 5 or 1 out of 5, right? But I gave it a 3 out of 5. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. So yeah, these movie videos I'm talking about movies or TV shows. Well, TV shows probably wouldn't take as long, but movies and that it'd take a very long time. But if you have any requests for any movies or TV shows or anime or animated series or anything like that, yeah, just let me know in the comments, and I'll put it. The next one I'll do is Hollywoodland. TL wanted me to do that one, and also It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. And I think that's the one he was talking about, but I put that on my list. So, but anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, that'd be appreciated. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys later.